as a father, contributing to like raising kids, all the work I've done and the growth I've had to be able to integrate the duality and this energy, it's been so beneficial for the others in my family. The way I'm able to be there for them is so much more supportive than I think if I was just clinging to this antiquated programmed notion of who I was and what I was supposed to do.
Yo, Chris, man, what are you doing? What are you up to?
I'm just helping people reinvent their lives. No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. Well, I'm going to join in.
Cool.
God bless, we're breaking these runs. Life too short to play it on speed run.
All right, my man Todd, what are we talking about for our reinventors on this special Mother's Day episode?
That's right. This is a special episode, isn't it, that we're doing on reinvention. And well, Chris, let's start out by sharing that, as always, our mission here is to help our listeners navigate the murky waters of career transitions and life changes that are up for so many of us, including us, right? And if you've been listening to us for a while, you know that we don't offer any magic pills on this show for how to ensure your success and fulfillment 100% of the time, okay? But what we do offer are constant reminders to the critical questions you need to be asking yourself, along with powerful frameworks you can use to make smart decisions about your future. And on this special Mother's Day episode, Chris and I are not only here to yap about how much we love our mamas, because we do, we're also here to share one of the most powerful frameworks for growth we've ever come across. And it's all about finding the elusive middle ground between the masculine and feminine forces that drive us, that make up our belief systems, and ultimately that have a lot to do with our current life situations. Yes, even regarding our careers. And so before you roll your eyes because of how woo we're becoming, or even worse, cancel us because we're talking about men and women divisively, hold your horses, okay? This conversation has nothing to do with division or woundness, only growth, your growth. And this framework can help you get clarity about what you want and help you open up new pathways for how to get there faster. Okay, so tune in today. This is an important episode. Take notes, because ideas are gonna pop. And Chris, with that, there's a lot there, and would love to hear how you'd like to begin this one.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have two very, very special mothers, very, very close in my life, my mother and my wife, and they're both wonderful mothers, and they're strong leaders of the family, right? And so you talk about masculine and feminine energy, and we can get into that, and you know, I'm like, oh, it's woo, Todd, it's woo, but that's a good thing. But I'm surrounded by a lot of females and feminine energy in both my family of origin, where it's my mom and my two sisters, and my current family, where it's my wife and my two daughters. And it affects me in a way that it brings me into a place of, I think, intuition and being attuned to the environment that I'm in. I think it really helps me as a coach, to be very honest. And if you think about the traditional sort of masculine coded provider type roles that I sort of came up in through my corporate career, having this balance, having this other mindset and this other emotionality and feeling, and having it among women who are career women and leaders, right? That dynamic has really, as I've grown, has helped me like open up how I show up and who I am. And that to me has been a very beautiful growth phase for me in my midlife as I'm reinventing my career and my life, to be able to like tap into what we would consider maybe a more feminine energy and to extricate from this sort of toxic masculine provider mentality syndrome that I was coming up through. So yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of stuff just came pouring out of me right there, Todd, because I think it's a really important dynamic, I think, for reinventors to be aware of, is that energy dynamic that you're living in that maybe was handed down onto you. And then how can you like evolve into your, your more evolved, integrated self as you're going through this process?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's so much here, and this is such a juicy conversation. And I think we are also going to do a Father's Day episode, okay? I think this is that important to talk about this way of looking at your life. And I also want to start out, by honoring your family and the feminine energy and women that you've been around. And, these reinvention bros, I'm the same way, Chris. Like, I've also been very supported by and had a lot of feminine energy and women supporting me. I was very close with my mom, who, as you know, passed away right during COVID, like literally the day the world shut down. Okay. Like she died, and she died in my dad's arms on March 19th of that day. And I'm in California and she's in New York, and she was my best friend, my mom. Like we just got along. Like my personality and the way that I am like comes from her. Right. And like she was like amazing. And she also had her faux pas, right? But she and I just got along. And it was that moment where I wasn't sure if I was able to fly to New York to go to her funeral and be there with my family, because this was the day that everything was shutting down. It was like the craziest moment. And we were up the whole night, my wife and I, like deciding what I should do. And, you know, at the time, my child was only like 4 years old, and I'm leaving my family during this chaotic moment. I ended up not going. And I didn't go to New York, and I, you know, witnessed her funeral like on Zoom.
Yeah.
I mean, remember this, like COVID was crazy, right? And so I had a very deep experience of that with her. And my sister, who I mentioned, you know, I'm very close with her. Like my best friend is my sister, and my wife is like such a rock to me. And I have a daughter, right? So I'm also like you, surrounded just by a lot of feminine energy. I get along with the women in my life. I always have. And it's really affected me in a bunch of ways, because I think that I tend to be by nature, maybe very masculine in the way that I operate. And when we want to talk about how we define these things, the way that I look at it, and again, this isn't just our fast rules, but like masculine energy is very direct. It just kind of goes, it like keeps going. It's uncompromising in some ways, you know, it's pushing boundaries. And we all have masculine and feminine energy. That's why I want to make that distinction between men and women. It's not just that men are that way and women are another way. It's just that, you know, the masculine energy tends to be very direct and pushing forward and purposeful in that way, where the feminine energy tends to be more nurturing and more relaxed and more patient, you know, and more allowing and reflecting for things to come through, even more healing, right? And so we do have these polarities within us. And because I've been maybe wired to be more of a masculine energy, but also have had a lot of feminine forces in my life that's really affected me, I've really tried to dance between the balance and access both, right? I think you have too. I think that's why you and I get along so well, is that we can kind of be the reinvention bros and bro it out and yo, dude, what's up, brother? You know, and do all that. But like also really heart-centered guys that are coaches, and we want to help a lot of people. Is why we're doing this, right? We're here to help a lot of people. And I just wanted to start there just by saying, like, I think that's part of the reason why we found each other here, is that we resonated at this level. And as you're thinking about like why you're listening to this episode when you're in a career transition, I think it's really important, because reinvention is a wake-up call for a lot of people out there to stop for a moment, because the world is changing so fast, and think, like, what am I going to do in the future? What role is right for me? Like, what type of work, what type of role? Because maybe what you did in the past wasn't really aligned and didn't fire you up. I mean, that's why for a lot of people, reinvention is like an opportunity to actually be like, all right, what do I want to do? I think that examining your inner masculine and your inner feminine qualities, and like really understanding like who you are when you're at your best, is a great beginning point, because that might lead the way to something that's way bigger and better in the future.
That's so well said, my man. And like, it is one of those things too, where you're right. I am totally like an undercover. There's people who meet me and think I'm like a bro or whatever it is. All my defense mechanisms are kind of rooted in that sort of maybe more traditional male gender role, you know, busting chops type of way of approaching things, some self-deprecating sarcasm and all that stuff. But it's like who I really am under that is much more integrated, right? And really has both the energies in it and the capability to tap into them. Also, I think something we want to talk about that's maybe a little bit more what people think of as traditional gender roles as opposed to energy is another axis to think about in reinvention, because we see a lot of people we talk to, and I've experienced this, and I think this is your experience, but you can tell me, like, as a father, I spend more time with my children than any father of 2 generations ago ever did. The way we run our domestic household, I mean, the business of the household that my wife and I co-run, the division of labor is much different than the division of labor in what I saw growing up, right? Part of that's because I live in New York City, so there's no lawn for me to mow, even if I wanted to. But I live such a more integrated family life, right? And again, this is about gender roles more than energy, but I think it does then require me to bring different energy and nurturing energy and warm energy. And so in the context of like thinking about career reinvention, if you're an investment banker, it might be really hard to shift between that direct rocket ship sort of mentality and then helping your kid with their homework and all that stuff back and forth, right? And so it's like, how can we integrate our full humanness? And the more our work is aligned with our full humanness and what we do, to me, it's like there's no code switching going on or anything like that. Like I am just bringing more of myself into my work. And so the integration of work and life is so much smoother than it was when I felt like I had to be one way here and one way there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting when you look at the global culture of work, like the way that industry and business and money all runs, like there is an argument to be made that a lot of it is driven by like the masculine energy. It's a very masculine culture that we live in. I mean, look, we both coach a lot of people. People are burned out. There's a lot of people, I should say, that aren't that happy with the way that their work is going. There's a lot of pressure. Like sometimes I just wake up and like, how do we all get into this system? It doesn't feel like it's fully aligned. And I don't want to put it all on the masculine energy, but I do think what we're seeing now is much more interest in a reintegration of the more feminine ways of being in the world, right? That I think you're embodying as a father in the way that you run your house, even in the work that you do in the world, which is very heart-centered, you know, being a coach and helping people. Me too, right? Like the same thing. Like I think there's a lot more integration, which is why I think this conversation is so interesting, because as you're listening to this, like really feel into how much of your time and energy and thoughts and work and everything that you do is spent kind of in that masculine mode versus that very feminine mode. And I think we need to bring more of honoring the Mother's Day energy of this call, more of that allow and reflect that we talk about on this podcast, more of the patience, more of the reflection, more of the healing work into our lives as this world is continuing to spin out of control. And I want to share a little personally about my wife and I. Like I said initially, I tend to be probably by my DNA more of a masculine energy person. And my wife tends to be very feminine at her core. But there's parts of us that are the complete opposite, where in our marriage, I can be very feminine and she can be very masculine. For example, her career, she works in aerospace. She works in a very corporate setting. It's funny that I do this work, right? Talking about people transitioning from corporate. My wife has had a 24-year career working for basically one massive group that produces all the airline parts, right? Like a huge company, you know, and has grown in that role and like has a great career and all that, but very corporate. And I can see how a lot of her energy when it comes to work is like so hyper masculine. And then she's got to come back and then she takes care of our family and we do a lot of things together. And then she toggles back into that very deep feminine. And so it's like very interesting to watch the roles shift. And I love what you said around allowing it all to be there. Like, it's not bad that she's accessing her masculine when she's working. And it's not any worse than her accessing more of a deeply feminine part of her nature when she's kind of with us in the family. It's just interesting to look at ourselves, because I think the more awareness that we have over how we're acting versus what our true nature is gives us the ability to grow into our best self, right? And I think that's what this conversation is. Like, even as we're talking, I'm thinking, yeah, like, where do I stand on the spectrum? Like, how can I be more imbalanced? You know, what do I need to do to really express myself more authentically?
Yeah, I think it definitely starts with an awareness of the possibility or the breadth of your personality and being and identity. For most of us, I think I'm confident saying that most of us learn this as we grow or as we get older, is there's more to us than maybe we've felt allowed to explore or allowed to express, or, you know, and I'm describing this very sort of consciously, but I think that these are things that are happening on a very sort of subconscious level that are ingrained in us, you know. And again, I think about my own mother and my own family of origin, and it was a different time, obviously, right? So in terms of like the gender roles, it was a little bit quite different than it is now. And I always think about my mom's career sometimes. Like, were there moments in her career where she was less assertive or less direct or less strong than she had a right to be, because she was very good at what she did, right? But she was not really like fighting and scratching and clawing to get up that ladder. I mean, a lot of that is because she raised a family. So there's that element where I actually think it's always been and still is much harder for women to balance those two things, even as gender roles are evolving. But I wonder if there was an element of like the way she had been sort of programmed as a child, that if she had been a son rather than a daughter, she might have been more like alpha, climbing that ladder, because she's so smart and she's so capable. And one of the things I kind of see in myself sometimes that I see in my mother is undermining her own capability, is like not trusting and believing in her own capability in certain things. And I appreciate you sharing. And obviously I know your mother passed away a few years ago, and my father passed away like actually about 20 years ago at this point. And I noticed with my mother that there was this element of like, there were all these things that had been sort of outsourced to him and that were sort of the man things and the way the house was divided. And a lot of those things she sort of saw as maybe she didn't feel comfortable taking them on, or she didn't really know how to do them. And so, I often would sort of take on some of those things. And the little sort of rub of it for me was, it's like, these are all things that she was very capable of doing and taking on because she's so smart. And, I'm not asking her to lift the 80-pound sack of Quikrete in the garage, but I'm talking about, there were things that she could figure out about the way she ran her house and her life that she just didn't give herself credit for. And I'm like, oh, as a coach, I'm like, that's like a limiting belief. That's not an actual lack of capability or capacity. And so, again, I'm getting more into gender roles maybe around this. I know it's blended together, Todd, but like, it's something that as I've gotten older, I've thought about, where it's like, man, that is a really challenging dynamic, that she came up in the 50s and 60s and just the way people thought about things was quite different. Yeah, I reflect on that sometimes. And especially in the context of reinvention, I think it's a beautiful thing that we're in this world now that has evolved. It ain't perfect, but more people have opportunities to follow their true soul as opposed to their programmed channel from childhood.
Yeah, I love it. I also love the role tangent you went on. I think it's so relevant right now. Like, what is my role? Who am I when I'm at my best? And when you're sharing that about your mom, I'm thinking about my sister, okay, who's, man, I'm just going all in, talking about my sister today, talking about my wife. Come under the hood in Todd's world, and I'll tell you what's going on. But my sister lost her husband a little over a year ago to cancer. He died at 57 years old, and it's terrible. Now, with Jeff, who passed, he also had gotten like a terminal diagnosis when he was 27. So he was basically given 30 extra years on this planet, where he had his two kids, my niece and my nephew, who were all very close. So while his passing is tragic, it was also a miracle that he lived for that long. But my sister is now going through a big reinvention, obviously, with being with somebody for that long. They were together for 37 years. They met when they were 22 years old. She's a little older than me. She's 59. So like her whole life is now being reinvented. And it's interesting that a lot of the things that Jeff took on, whether they're masculine or feminine roles, doesn't matter, but there were just things that he does that now she has to do. And it wasn't that she's not capable to do these things. It's just that she just never did, for a bunch of reasons. And now she's learning and growing. In fact, my sister got a tattoo on her arm. She never had a tattoo. No one in my family ever had a tattoo, but she got a little caterpillar on her arm. It represents like just being brand new, and like she wants to turn into a butterfly, right? Beautiful. So it's very, very beautiful. I think the role thing is really important because for reinventors, people listening to this, it is really important to take stock of yourself. What are your strengths, right? Like one of the things that I look at are, okay, what are my strengths on the masculine side, and then what are my strengths on the feminine side? And as a coach, I can tell you, I'm curious about your opinion on this, but when I am talking to people or groups, the need that most people have, especially when it comes to the work, is more integration of the feminine qualities, right? Because there's the whole culture is pushed to go, go, go and push so much that a lot of what I talk about with people is retraining them to sit with their thoughts, sit with their feelings and we call it allow and reflect on this show, to start carving out some space to allow yourself to experience yourself That could be just in meditation, listening to music, going on walks, instead of constantly moving and pushing, where you're driven by mostly anxiety and even some fear. You learn to stop and you learn to reflect and you learn to just take inventory of what's going on inside. And I would argue that that is a very feminine quality, allow and reflect, that can then lead to more attuned and aligned masculine action, which when you're ready to go and do stuff. And I think that is really what's out of balance for people right now, is a real melding and integrating of both things, right? Isn't just all go, go, go. That's why millions of people are burned out. We've all got to start, especially in this day and age, Chris, of AI coming on and AI is doing all this stuff. I mean, there is a lot of energy in the work career transition space of AI. Like everything's AI right now.
Yeah.
Like I get it. Like a lot of movement. Everyone's trying to capitalize on it. Everyone's trying to figure it out. A lot of that. I think, and maybe I'm just crazy, but this is the best opportunity to take self-inventory, to stop and reflect. Things are changing. Almost none of it is under your control. Okay. You can't control the way that the world is going. You can't. There's very little that you can actually control. So learn to honor yourself and take inventory. And from there, I promise you that once you start integrating these practices and you start tapping into that more quiet, feminine energy of reflection, even if it's hard at first, right? Even if it feels difficult and you're journaling and it's just like stuff's coming out that you don't like, that's fine, let it out. I promise you that the dividends of that are huge. And I would say that right now it's more important than ever. People need to be integrating this more, going out into nature, connecting with themselves. It might feel for some of you that you can't do that. You don't have time. You need to figure out money. You need to figure out all these things. The pressure is immense, but the answers come in space. And I think the feminine understands space more than the masculine does. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to have this episode with you, is to tear that apart a little bit, because I think we need both. It's not just one or the other. We need more integration. We need more alignment.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that's spot on. And I feel like this idea of not having time, right? And I think the AI stuff that's going on really, really just leans into that, where it's like people are like, you should be going to bed exhausted and sleeping for half an hour. Cause like, if you're not learning all the things, right, you're losing ground, Then I'm like, I can see that. But at the same time, what life are we trying to live here? Right. So I know that I have, and this might not be strictly masculine or feminine, but I have this corporate framework coded into me of where it's at 9:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. I don't feel like I am allowed to be, taking a nice walk in the woods or writing, or like I should be like typing away at the computer. But you said it so well, my man. It's like just this idea of the growth and the learning and the solving actually comes in space when you're able to give it space. And I think that there's a lot of people, and I've certainly been guilty of this much of my life, who just want to like logic their way through the problem, like think their way, cognition, just bang, 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 bang. And it really does a disservice to our intuition, to our nervous systems, our body brains, which I think are actually way smarter than we give them credit for. They know the answer. And then this is just sort of the computer that then can like execute the code to go do the thing. And so not strictly masculine, feminine, but certainly it's more thinking about that integration of our dual nature, right? And I think that is something that, to the original question you kind of posed, Todd, I think we both find a lot of times that when we're coaching people, I'd say a general factor we almost always encounter is like a lack of awareness of the duality of their own nature, or a lack of integration of the duality of their own nature. And once you can get people to sort of be more whole, now they have this whole other sort of like toolkit that they can tap into to grow and to, I won't say solve their life's problems, because that's not really what it is, but it's just like take on so much more and be so much more and like really kind of come into who they want to be.
Right. I mean, people are talking about this AI revolution. I look at it differently, Chris. I think we're actually at the cusp of the biggest human revolution that's ever happened, because AI is going to come in and do a lot of things. We know that. I mean, things are going to change, and it is an opportunity for us to understand and tap into who we are as individuals. Like, it actually can help us wake up as people. Okay. And we are not computers. And so when you said, oh, like tapping into the logical, cognitive part, the analytical part of our brain, which in our culture, most people just think that's their only identity, is just with that. Right. And we also have emotions, we have intuition, we have physical bodies. Like, there's other things, there's other types of intelligence that we have. And we want to be able to integrate this beautiful machinery that we have of thinking and cognition and analyzing things, but also putting it in its place, in a sense, and saying, all right, this is something that we have access to, but it's just a tool and just part of the whole of who I am. And realize that we're not AI. Like, we are different than AI. Like, it's a different thing, and we are different. And let AI do what it does. It's a computer program. It's going to run, and it's going to have rules, and it's going to evolve in its own way that we're also playing with it, of course. But I think that the real revolution here is for human beings to really recapture that essence of who they are. Like, we talk a lot about getting clarity on this show, because getting clarity is really important. This is the time when we talk about allow and reflect. What I invite you to allow and reflect on is, what do I really want to do? I have this short life. It's a blip in the freaking matrix. Okay. I only have X number of years left. You know, and yes, even for you longevity freaks out there that think we're going to put chips in and live forever, maybe, but right now we don't think that's going to happen. We have X amount of time left. Okay. Me, I'm about halfway through. If I'm halfway through, I'm happy. I'm 53. That means I live to 106. That's a pretty long life, but
We'll take it.
maybe I'm more than halfway through. Okay. But that's a finite time. And so this is short. And I know that it's going to go by faster and faster as I get older. So I need to wake myself up every single day and get aligned to the things that are really important to me. And also align with the energy of excitement that there's a lot that I can do. There's infinite opportunities in front of me if I would just use these practices of allow and reflect, tap into the full capacity that I have as a human in my mind, not just the cognitive, analytical, let me make money and profit from things, but also like asking these deeper questions. And I think that's where the value of this process is, and this framework is. The opportunity is big for you because you actually can do a lot of different things right now if you would just use the full gamut of tools in front of you, which I believe this is.
Absolutely, man. Well said. I will go maybe even a little bit further and say, I think in 5 years, it's going to be more profitable to be a poet than a coder. Right. And I think that's, if we think about this traditional masculine, traditional feminine, if we play our cards right as a society here, and there's no guarantee of that, but if we do it right, how many people who otherwise felt shunted into something that was what they were supposed to do, or strictures of gender norms or society told them how many of those people are going to be free to actually actualize the beautiful thing deep in their soul that they otherwise might have been scared of? If we kind of liberate ourselves from all the dutiful, logical, tap, tap, tap computing stuff, and then now we can just be a fleet of poets out there, or whatever it is that lights us up in our different ways. I think somebody might listen to that and say, oh my God, this guy's off his rocker. That's like so idealistic. And I'm like, well, we get to choose. We get to choose as a society. So like, why would we not try to lean our way into that direction, or at least for ourselves individually, create that life? And I'm going through this thing where I'm in my midlife, and I am tapping every day more into my creative, expressive, one could argue more feminine self. And I don't know, I'm freaking loving it. You know what I mean? Like, it's incredible. This is such a great time in my life. I feel like so much more myself. It's like a wall is down that was up in my 20s and 30s, and it's not really there anymore. So I just really want more people to have this experience. I mean, in some way, Todd, this is like the whole point of this conversation and the work we do and the coaching and all the things we do. We want people to have this fuller experience of their life, whether it's their career or whether it's literally their whole life. I mean, I just love that. I get such a charge out of even helping anybody even start to see the dimmest little light of possibility there.
You just said this is why we're doing this. Because if you're listening to this and you've heard us before and you're listening to this moment in the conversation, it's because there's something more for you and you know it and you want to know it, but there's still doubt. And let's go back and I'm going to talk about the doubts. I want to pick apart what you just said. Oh, in 5 years from now, it's going to be more profitable to be a poet than a coder. I mean, yes, like even me, you like who believes it. Ooh, like how is that going to work? And I want to break it down in a minute because the question is always going to come around to this. This is what people are thinking when they hear something like that. Like, oh, okay, it's very pie in the sky. And how is everyone going to make money being a poet, right? The way that money flows in this society and the way that economies work, it doesn't make any sense that on the current trajectory that even seems like a possibility. Okay. And I've asked a lot of people this question, right? We had Bill Gurley on the show, like a billionaire, like we were asking him these questions. I asked Bill Burnett this question from Designing Your Life, at Stanford, like literally one of the top thinkers. He wrote a best-selling book, New York Times, on designing your life. And, all these people, all these experts that we bring on the show say the same thing that, yeah, there's probably some truth to what you're saying. And it doesn't make sense to us right now because we can't understand how economies and money and like culture is going to shift to allow that to be. But what I believe, Chris, is that things are just going to change. Economies are going to change. The nature of money is going to change. Like this is how big of a shift we're in right now. It is like a mind-blowing shift. And it's okay because no one really knows where it's going. And the answers and why we're doing reinvention is because we want you to look at yourself and ask yourself the questions and focus your time and energy and efforts on understanding who you are and what you need to do. And focus on the things that you can't control, which again is yourself. And not all these things outside. Like I get a smile, man, when I hear you saying, I'm waking up and I'm creative and I'm playing my guitar and I'm doing my thing and I'm more creative and I'm writing and I'm speaking. Like you're becoming a creator more and more every day. And, I believe that the people who embrace that now will end up being the big winners later. And I don't know. We don't know how that's going to play out or why it's going to play out, but that's the seed here. That's the energy. Push yourself to be creative. I just got to say one thing that you did on a call with our community yesterday when you said there was somebody talking about how they want to do these videos and they have this crazy sense of humor and they want to go out and they want to film some stuff. And he immediately went to, but I could never make money doing that. And you were instantly like, no, it's not about making money on it. It's about freeing yourself to express yourself creatively, which is a part of reinvention. It isn't everything, right? Because some people need to get a job and they need to make money and we don't want to just be completely pie in the sky. Like everything needs to be done with the rational mind as well. But this is a time to be exploring creatively. This is a time to be getting out there and you never know what's going to happen, Chris. You never know how it's going to change.
And I think you're 1,000% right on that, Todd, right? Where it's like, I'm not necessarily saying if you're going to be creating more and that's the way you're going to make money or that's the way that you're going to go from your desk job to playing guitar or whatever it might be. But I am saying, and I'm saying this from like very direct experience that I'm living through, is that when you allow yourself to do those things, to express yourself in those ways, it opens up the doors all throughout your life, right? Because I think we're walking around, so many of us, maybe not even aware of how much we're suppressing ourselves. And like, that's a hell of a lot of effort. That's exhausting effort. It's sort of squelching your essential being. And when you can just like really get into that, again, tapping into the masculine and the feminine and all of it and integrating the duality of your existence as a person and letting it all flow, you just get so much more energy to pursue. It still can be accounting. You don't have to be a guitarist. Just like let that flow and be a fuller human and see what happens. I'm going to tell you, even if you think, how is that going to turn into better business results? Think about what it's all for. Your life is going to be better whether it turns into better business results or not, because you're just not going to be carrying that anchor. And Todd, to bring it back to sort of the theme, we talked about Mother's Day and we talked about the feminine energy we're surrounded by in our respective families. I mean, I also think about as a father contributing to like raising kids and being a part of this family, all the work I've done and the growth I've had to like be able to integrate the duality and this energy, it's been, I think, so beneficial for the others in my family, for my daughters and my wife and my mother and my sisters. And like the way I'm able to be there for them is so much more supportive than I think if I was just clinging to this antiquated programmed notion of who I was and what I was supposed to do. And, you know, on the Father's Day episode, we'll talk about maybe more of the role of the man and masculinity and all that stuff. But I really think the role of the man, for me, the way I see it, has evolved very greatly in the past 5 or 10 years to be much more supportive and warmth and
Yes.
and holding as opposed to pushing and
allowing.
maybe the very definition of masculine and feminine, certainly gender roles, but energies, maybe even those definitions are becoming blended and antiquated. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think the more we just let it flow and the less we try to force it to be in these strict definitions and channels, I think the better we're going to be just as a species.
Yeah, man. I mean, and I just got to hop on that. Talk about my sister. I talk about my wife. Now I'm going to talk about my daughter. I'm going to tell you a little story here. I'm getting a little personal today, but this goes to what you just said, because when you start becoming more of a whole person and you allow yourself to express your creativity and, you know, to express all parts of yourself, the masculine, the feminine, and you're just in it and you're really trying to become a better person, it affects the other people in your life. Okay. And as a dad as well, my daughter is 8 years old, and I picked her up from school yesterday and I could tell something was a little bit off. You know, she's in the back, she's looking funny. And then finally I asked her and she looked at me and she was really upset about something that happened in school, right? Something that to her was like the most devastating thing like ever. And she started crying. And at first I was like making light of it, but then we came home and it continued and we went into the bedroom and I said, babe, like, tell me what's going on. Tell me what happened. And I just allowed her just to fully express. And she was literally convulsing and hyperventilating. And I just rubbed her. It's totally okay. It's like totally okay. I just had such empathy for her because bringing a kid into the planet, you realize that being human is hard at times. We're going to go through it, you know, and like watching like someone that you love unconditionally, this little person who doesn't have a larger framework like I do, like really go through her own pain. There's nothing that you can do but just allow that. You know, and tell her that it's okay and just tell her that I got you. And like, no matter what, like I'm here for you, you know? And that's, to me, it was such a beautiful moment between us, you know, that this morning we got up and she had to go tell her teacher something. And I went with her into the class, you know, and I actually missed an appointment because this is more important, right? For me to go support her so that way she could tell her teacher what she needed to heal something. That is so much more important than how much money I'm making this month, to be honest.
Yeah,
like, to me,
yeah, of course.
it's the human thing. I'm helping shape her mind in a way that is more integrated. So that way she'll be better than I was at that age. Cause I wasn't getting that type of support, no knocking my parents, but maybe just times have changed and we're more, you know, evolved at this point. But it's like, this is how we play it forward. So I think the reason why I'm sharing that is, yes, like you want to be growing and becoming a better person for yourself and you want to achieve things and your life is short. Also do it for others, right? Like you're playing a game that impacts other people in ways that you probably aren't even aware of. And so like, love that part of it. Like you're having an impact. You're having an impact on everyone around you. Be the best version of yourself for those that you love, those that you touch. Let go of your judgment. Let go of your attachment to who you think they need to be. There is so much pain in that. And no one likes to feel that they're being wrong or doing wrong. And we do that all the time. I do it to my wife. I do it to my daughter. I'm not sitting here enlightened. I do this. Let it go and realize that all these people in your life are equally struggling, you know, like you are, and they don't really know exactly what to do, just like you don't. And let go of that and just start to have more deep empathy for their journey. And I think that starts to change your orientation as well. So It's not just us, Chris, it's how we interact with the world. That's the big change. And I wanted to bring that in at the end of this episode to talk about, I think that's a very beautiful global feminine energy and message that we want to be able to get out there.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. I love that whole story. Yeah, you said it so well. Like, what are we doing this whole thing for? All this work that we're doing it so we can be there for our 8-year-olds in those moments. Yep. Not so we can like be like, oh, I was going to book a prospect if I had that appointment. And it's like, what a misprioritization. Could you imagine if somebody tuned into this podcast and they were like, I just need help with my resume. And then they hear this episode and they're like, what is going on? The authentic Trojan horse. I love
Right.
that phrase. Let's leave that as an Easter egg here for people who might
Good point.
want to know what that is. You know what's awesome though? I made a joke about like, oh, what if you're coming here and you're expecting work on your resume? But like, yeah, this is it. All the stuff we're talking about here, like this episode might be most to the core of what we actually are thinking about and working on, because reinvention is not a career pivot. Reinvention is not a lateral move to a different job. This is about bringing out the best in your own life and being the person that you kind of always knew and maybe have been hiding from, that you always knew you could become. And so it's way bigger than just, I don't like my boss and I want a new job or whatever it is. And we're really getting into it. Season 2, we are really digging into the bigger picture stuff.
No, it's good. I mean, I love doing this with you. I mean, I'm excited for the Father's Day episode that we're going to record, because I think we'll go more into that, being dads and like what the responsibility as men in this world are. I mean, if you like what we're talking about here, I mean, we go deep, as you see. It's not just, I got to redo my LinkedIn profile and I got to like, send those DMs in a better way. Can you guys help me do that? Yeah, we do some of that on here.
Yeah.
But our shared objective here is to help humans flourish. A lot of that is understanding who they are at the core and talking about tools and ideas that can help you just navigate this crazy life that we're in, so that way you have the best shot of being happy and fulfilled and aligned with who you really are. And I think that's why this conversation resonates for us, because even as we're talking, I feel like I'm becoming a better person. And I hope you're along for the journey. So definitely subscribe to our podcast here, like follow us along. Like if you love this, share it with some friends, because we love doing it and we just want to do more of it. So with that, man, I feel complete. Thank you, Chris, brother. It's always a pleasure to be here, man, and can't wait for next time.
Yeah, and hi, Mom. I love you. And hi, all the women in our life. We love you.
Yeah, I love you, Mom, up there. I know you're looking down. Big love. Thanks, guys.
There's no fear in my chest. Hit a move with my steps. Walk away from the pain I've been through. This feeling I'm feeling is brand new. This is the moment I break